What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only NIO stock and what you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to break down why on earth NIO went exactly where I predicted it would go and why NIO does have potential to continue, but in order for that to happen, it's going to depend heavily on the data that comes out for tomorrow, and that is CPI data. So I'm going to break down why tomorrow is going to be massive, what you should be watching for, how this may affect the markets, and how this will affect NIO stock going forward. Now, before I break anything down about NIO and also what's happening with SPY, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. And the last things, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $2,000. And the best part is, any can be a free NIO share. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just a week, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So in our previous video, guys, I mentioned that there was a potential Wyckoff accumulation schematic being respected on SPY. And if you don't believe me, I mentioned that we had this big downtrend to start off phase A, very similar to this big downtrend here. Then we get a bit of a bounce, and the final major bottom here, right? Very similar to the major bottom we saw on SPY. This is like the sell test in phase B. Before SPY got another reaccumulation right here, right? There's a reaccumulation right here, then the sign of strength pump. And I thought we would kind of consolidate a bit and then get a rip for phase E. Instead, we kind of consolidated. We didn't really consolidate. We came down. We did not trade sideways, and we just ripped all the way to gap resistance, actually breaking a little bit above it. So it looks like this thing wants to run, but in order for that to happen, it's going to depend heavily on CPI coming out for tomorrow. Now, the market rallying into CPI is not the best of signs, but here's what I think is going to happen. I believe that when you look at the daily on SPY, we have another divergence that formed. We have a bearish divergence forming, and that's not the best of signs for the bulls. To me, it looks like we're either going to crash tomorrow or we get a pop up, and then we're going to form our final top very soon before the market reverses and starts downtrending. I believe that's coming very soon. Maybe tomorrow could be the day the trend starts. I'm going to break down what you should watch for tomorrow, why tomorrow is so important. So to start us off, we have CPI coming out an hour before the market opens. CPI and core CPI are coming out. The forecast is a 6.7%. I'm sorry, no, the consensus, that's going to be the most important one. The consensus is 6.5% for CPI. That's what we want to see. And then core needs to be about 5.7%. So this is actually the more important number. Previously it was 7.1%, and then core was 6%. So we want core to come down. Core is CPI without food and energy. And the actual CPI should be about 6.5% or lower. That's what the market wants. And just so you know, this is one of the most important inflationary measures. If you look at the daily on SPY, the last time CPI came out, it was crazy. And I have a feeling we're going to do a repeat of that price action. I'm going to show you a little bit later and how that will affect NIO. But notice how we gapped up on SPY. We had this huge rally. Then we got the final top, rejection. We started downtrending. We had FOMC, and the market started this massive downtrend. And what kicked it off? It was kicked off by CPI, the last push up before the major drop. CPI was the thing that turned the tide in this market. And it might happen again. All right. And I think that my prediction is it's going to happen very soon. And most likely, I think CPI might trigger a reversal. Now, there's good things coming out. CPI is likely going to be lower than expected or very close to expectations. But I'm not sure about core CPI being 5.7%. It is very possible. Really hope that that's the case. When we look at the data, I have the gas prices in the USA basically On average, for the month of November, gas was $3.80. For December, it was $3.32. So there was a big decline in December. You guys can see gas prices came down pretty hard, and energy does make up a big sector in CPI, 13% of it. So I do believe there is an increased probability CPI is going to be at expectations or lower, but I'm not really sure about core. So even if CPI is down, we also want core CPI to be down. CPI excluding food and energy is core. We want that to be down as well, because if it's not, that could still not be the best for the markets. This is the trend that CPI is on. We're obviously seeing this big decline. It could continue, but once again, you need to see the specific numbers. We've been getting above 8% CPI for far too long. We're barely starting to see it in the sevens. Maybe the sixes could come. The market really wants that. I predict we're going to either meet expectations or maybe be below expectations on CPI, but I'm not sure about core. That's a little bit harder to tell. So how may this affect NIO and the market? That's what I want to predict for you guys. I don't know. That's the first thing I have to say. I don't know. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. Maybe some insiders, but the large majority of people, institutions, banks, they don't know what's going to happen. And if CPI is much higher than expected, hypothetically, okay, the market could crash. The market could tank very hard starting tomorrow. It's possible. But what I predict is something a little different. I mentioned to you guys that on the daily charts, we have this resistance level where SPY keeps rejecting off of this trend line. There's a chance we could actually come close to it or even retest it before we see a big drop. You could argue that the Wyckoff accumulation schematic is done, or it has a little more room to go. I don't really know exactly. It won't predict exactly where we're going to go to, but it's very hard to tell. That's the thing. But here's what I predict is going to happen. I'm going to relate this to NIO in just a few minutes, so please be patient with me. SPY has this gap from December. We have this big gap right here that's not filled, and it looks like we might want to go for the gap fill. So I predict that tomorrow CPI is going to be lower than expected and core may be at expectations. So we might see the market kind of gap up like this, and then it might start pushing to fill the gap. And once it fills the gap, it might push up a little more and get to the trend line and hit 400. I think that's what's going to happen. And I think what's going to happen is people are going to just start getting excited. They're going to start FOMOing into the market. They're going to think the market's going to explode, and it's going to be a trap. Because right around 400 or maybe 398, who knows where we peak. And this is just my prediction. Remember, we could just crash immediately and not even see the final pump. The crash could just come immediately if CPI is bad. But this is just my prediction. Then once the numbers come out, I think that we're going to start coming down then. Like this. There's going to be a big decline just like last time. I think that's going to happen. We're going to fill the gap we form here after we gap up, and the market's going to start declining slowly like this. Not super quickly, but slowly going into like the FOMC meeting. And that's going to end up dictating where the market goes from here. You could see price action that looks like a lot like this, another decline of a trend. This is just like hypothetical. But for tomorrow specifically, I think we might gap up, push up, maybe retest the trend line, get a big rejection when people least expect it, and see the market come down. That's my prediction. Okay. If I'm completely wrong, please do not throw hands. I can predict it perfectly. This is the move I'm seeing. Maybe a repeat of this. This was the last CPI that came out, by the way. Yeah, it was right here. So I think we're going to see a move like this. Just like this. That's my prediction. And I think that we're going to gap up. Maybe the data is better than expected. I don't really know, but maybe we push up and we get the final top before a big rejection. That could easily happen. And if that's the case, it's important to be prepared for anything. Because I think a lot of sellers are lurking and they're getting ready to start shorting the market hard again. That's what I think. I I could be completely wrong because nobody knows, but I also say this because I think the market might pop again. I think that because when you look at the VIX looks like it could come down to maybe like 19 point something and bounce. Maybe it gaps down and then we get a big bounce. Or if the market like pushes all the way up to 400, maybe the VIX comes all the way down to the 19s and tries to fill this gap, or we have a fake out and then we just push up again. But we do have strong support around like 19.79. Maybe we come down to one of these levels and we get a big bounce on the VIX. That could also happen, right? We don't have to fill the gap immediately on VIX, but it could happen relatively soon. So for NIO, what does this all tell me? NIO is going to be dictated by all of this. To me, it looks like NIO is getting hit by strong resistance. My target was 11.66. We actually hit 11.72, then came back down to 11.5. I think if the market does gap up, NIO could gap up and hit 12. We could see NIO hit 12, maybe go a little higher, 12 to 12.5 around here. And then NIO might get a big rejection and start coming down and slowly come back down to the 11s or so. That's what I'm basically predicting. I think the market's going to dictate how NIO moves. I think we gap up, push up temporarily, get a rejection, come all the way back down. That's just my prediction, guys. Please be ready for anything. Be ready for the data. If the data comes out and it's worse than expected and the whole market's going to crash, watch 11.3, the 11.3-ish zone as support. Break below that, the next major support is 10.8. Break below that, then we have another critical zone around 10.4 to 10.5, then 10 flat. So I just noted some very key resistance and support levels for NIO. All support levels could become resistance levels if we retest them. So please be ready, guys. Tomorrow is going to be a massive, massive day. With that said, thank you all so much for listening. My prediction, which could be completely wrong, but I'm just going to say what I think is going to happen, is we gap up. NIO will open around like 11.7, maybe. We push up to maybe 12 on NIO, maybe go a little higher. Then we get a big rejection and we start coming down as the day goes on. And as the days continue to go on, NIO continues to come back down to the 11s and then the 10s and so on and so forth. Just my prediction. We'll see what happens. Thank you all for listening. Have a great rest of the day. NIO to the moon because the long-term future is still incredibly bright. And peace out.